the last time the Pitt Panthers won a football national title, 1976, under the guidance of Johnny Majors. Pitt that year beat Georgia, the SEC champions, in 1976 in the Sugar Bowl to secure that national title. A guy who I'm sure remembers a lot about the year 1976, whether it was college football, whether it was Leonard Skinner dropping "Gimme back my bullets" early in that year, is Cecil Hurt of the Tuscaloosa News and Tidesports.com. What about it? The bicentennial year, Cecil, 1976.
Absolutely. Went to a goat roast and watched the tall ships in the harbor in New York on television. The goat roast was in Huntsville. One of those earth roasts where they dig a pit and cook the goat for a couple of days, and some Boston butts and whatever else they wanted to throw down there. But that's a good way to celebrate the bicentennial.
Pitt Panthers that year, Cecil, and we think about it and we wonder what has happened to Pitt football. Although, Jackie Sherrill came in there. Interesting path for Jackie Sherrill, somewhat like, I guess, Pat Dye, you could say, in terms of heading off to the Northwest and then coming back east and taking over for Johnny Majors there at Pitt and coaching Dan Marino, Hugh Green, and those guys, some great teams in that run as well. Sort of your recollection of that era there of college football. Alabama going from 76 and a 9-3 season seemed to ramp things up into that final push under Paul Bear Bryant.
The 76 season was relative to the standards of Alabama was a disappointment. Alabama lost to Nebraska, lost to Georgia. Played a great game in the coldest game of 1976 in the Liberty Bowl in Memphis against UCLA, but didn't win the SEC. The only year in the 70s that in that long stretch from 71 through 79 that Alabama didn't win the SEC. Georgia obviously won it, went and played in the Sugar Bowl and played the Pitt team that you're talking about.
Was 76 for Alabama sort of like 2010 for Alabama from that standpoint?
Yeah, maybe so. Maybe just overscheduled a little bit. Had some difficult road games. Really came wedged between, I guess, where it's comparable. 75 was a great team. 77, really talented team, super talented team. Dominated Ohio State in the Sugar Bowl the next year, and could easily have been national champions in 77 because that was, Ozzie Newsome and Johnny Davis and those guys still around back then. So, 76 was the schedule was a little bit quirky. Jeff Rutledge threw a lot of interceptions up at, against Nebraska, and so it was just one of those funny years. Losing at Georgia, losing in Athens, was probably the memorable game. But again, bounced back in the Liberty Bowl, and like in 2010, just dominated the bowl opponent. Just said, well, if they'd have played like that every week, but of course you don't play like that every week.
Was the season opening loss to Ole Miss, I guess, in Jackson, was that, I would guess, a pretty big surprise too?
It was. It was de-flown, and they'd lost to Missouri in 75 in the opener, turned around and did the same thing in 76. So, 3 losses back then. You just didn't know really how it was difficult to be equipped to handle such a thing.
As you said, though, 77, 78, 79, really returned to dominance.
In Nebraska, we're morphing years together here, but 77 was a great team. It was great.
And again, we talk about Pitt going an extended stretch without much of significance of note in terms of on-the-field performance. But, Cecil, we are talking about the defending Coastal Division champions of the ACC,
We
the
are.
Pitt Panthers.
We are, and they may well win the Coastal again. Looks like from ACC media days that Coastal is wide open. I'm not
Everybody
sure
got a vote, I think.
I'm not sure you couldn't put Mississippi State in the Coastal and have them go on a tear.
It'd be good if we could put Ole Miss over there. That way Ole Miss could win a division for once, you know?
Yeah,
Maybe.
It's funny. I had that thought this weekend as I was looking at some of the polls. What if we relegate? You know, everybody's talking about schedule equality. Nobody plays anybody. And, your crossover opponents. What if the two SEC divisions were top 7 from last year against, and then the other division was bottom 7. So you had Alabama, Georgia, Florida, LSU, all in one division, along with, I guess, Kentucky this year. They'd be, they might lose their relegation spot if you fell out. If you finish 7th, you drop into that other division. Whoever wins it moves up. But that would be, if you had a division. This was my thought. If you had a division, let's say Missouri would be in that top 7. Put Missouri ahead of South Carolina. You had a division, which this is not that different from the ACC Coastal. And if you had a division that had South Carolina, Tennessee, Vandy, Kentucky, who I think will be down a little bit this year, the 2 Mississippi schools and Arkansas, that'd be a pretty entertaining division. That'd be a pretty good divisional race.
You know what? That would be a good Thursday night division, Cecil. Just have a Thursday night.
It would. Thursday night, have the marquee game at 11 o'clock on Saturday from that division. Sort of a Jefferson Pilot tribute every week. Have Ole Miss and Vandy squaring off at 11 on Saturday.
I love it. It's kind of a varsity and JV.
Yeah, and then
deal.
let the other division play the CBS game on Saturday and play the Saturday night ESPN game.
I think if we had relegation though in the SEC, we wouldn't be coming off an off season with no coaching changes at the head coach level, because I'm not sure Auburn
probably
would have appreciated being relegated in favor of Kentucky, for the upcoming
season. Auburn's almost got that schedule anyway because they got Georgia and Florida in their crossover.
Yeah.
So they've got a lot to chew on as it is. But that would you think that would since the selling ticket situation has come up, you think that would sell some tickets if Alabama's conference schedule was included LSU, Auburn, Texas A&M, Georgia, Florida, Missouri?
Well, I think if Nick Saban had his way, right, and we had the conference games, it would look a lot more like that, wouldn't it?
Go to the 9 or 10, yeah. It'd be one more crossover is how that worked, but you would think, well, the averages in the crossover lottery this year, they'd be playing Georgia or Florida during the regular season. Now next year they do play Georgia, but that would be good too. Nick bangs that drum every year in Destin, and he gets told every year to put that drum away. That can't make the belt bowl if you don't go 6-6. That's not what Nick's worried about, but that's what some of the coaches are worried about.
Nick bangs that drum, Cecil, and it echoes. Nobody joins in with a guitar or a saxophone or anything, There
are a couple of situations. I understand that Florida plays Florida State. I get that, but sooner or later, people are going to complain. Coaches are going to get up and complain that kids pay too much attention to their smartphone. Then give them better games. Maybe they'll pay less attention.
Cecil, we didn't get a chance to catch up with you last week in the middle of the bedlam that is SEC Media Days. I got to think, based on a column or so that you've written in the last week, you about Clemson and Alabama out?
Yeah, if they play, they'll play. That was a big topic when Nick was there. I have a lot of different feelings. I was not going to write the knee-jerk, oh, Alabama ought to say that Clemson's really good kind of column. You know, that's what good does that do anybody unless you're a diehard Clemson fan that needs that kind of self-approbation every day. Yeah, Alabama in the 48 hours after the game said plenty of nice things about Clemson. And you know what they need to think about Clemson after that? Zero. None. And why anybody, and again, I'll accept, if you're a dyed orange and purple Clemson fan, just like an Alabama fan, sure. You know, Alabama fans gripe about that kind of stuff sometimes too. And you want to hear how good your team is. I get that. But if you're a writer, if you're a journalist, why do you care? What possible interest could you have in Nick Saban saying, boy, Clemson, they're really a good team, instead of actually talking about the issues that concern his team? Hey, who thinks that way? I can promise you this, and you know, I'm low on the rung and at the end of a dismal career, but I have not sat around in 5 of the last 10 years and wonder how the team that got their butt kicked by Alabama in the championship game, what they were saying in July of the next year. I promise you, I hadn't ever given that a thought.
Yeah, I hear you. And, you know, people ask Nick Saban about Nick Saban's football team.
Don't care.
Yeah.
Don't know what Clemson says the July after Alabama beat them. Don't care. You know, because it's no value to anybody. You know, I'm just, and it just perplexes me what value anybody gets out of it. You know, if Alabama had come out in Santa Clara and said, this team's terrible, you know, they don't deserve any respect, we don't like them, they didn't, you know, if we'd have played better, you know, they didn't do any of that. They said all the right things in Santa Clara. You know, that was 6 months ago. 48-hour rule, man. Double the 24-hour rule. Give you a 48-hour rule to hear all that stuff. And then Clemson's got teams to play and Alabama's got teams to play, and it's time to move on.
In relation to Nick Saban's comments on the coaching staff from the previous season.
I thought that was interesting.
That was
interesting. That's what nobody wants to hear, because he's not saying how great Clemson was. But I thought that was interesting.
Had we sort of heard that from Nick, though, maybe not in so many certain words like we heard, or the way that he put it out there in Hoover, but wasn't this kind of what he was telling us even back in the spring with the Alabama Standard
absolutely.
talk and the narrative that came from that season-ending performance?
Absolutely. And I'm trying to remember what the context was. And if I'm talking about an off-the-record conversation, I don't intend to be, but I don't think I am. Where he talked about the time that he had to spend, that he didn't get to spend enough time coaching the players because he was coaching the coaches. I'm pretty sure he said that publicly. And you got to pick up on those things, and you got to say, yeah, that's not how he wants to spend his time. Now, is he ultimately responsible for the guys who got hired, and the emphasis that some of them had on recruiting when they were hired, guys that he hired because they were great recruiters? Yes, he's the one who hired them. He's the one who's responsible. I don't think he shirks that responsibility. I think he was asked, why the turnover? Why so many changes? And some of it was guys moving on, and some of it was guys moving on because they thought it was probably a good time to move on. You know, that the boss wasn't thrilled. You know, there are a couple of situations. You can't overgeneralize. Michael Oxley, that's not who he was talking about. Michael Oxley got a head coaching job under unique circumstances at the only place in the Power Five, probably, because of his background, because of his connections up there, because of their specific needs at this time for a unifier, Mike Locksley was a good fit for Maryland, and it made sense for him to go to Maryland. But that was a unique set of circumstances, or he would be back on the staff this year.
Yeah, and even after he went to Maryland, I believe he continued to try to help Alabama on the recruiting trail.
He certainly didn't try and flip guys and
right.
undercut them. Now, guys that are juniors this year, sure, that's fair game. That's his job.
Sure,
but yeah, I don't think anybody had a problem with Mike Locksley, and I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, well, he had a problem with this guy or he had a problem with that guy. But you can look at that. Some guys got better jobs. Some guys kind of took what you would consider to be something lateral. But it all goes back to Nick, and if the changes he made don't work this year, and he's standing up next to Eli and saying the assistants didn't do this and didn't do that, then it's on Nick. And he appreciates that. He understands that.
This time a year ago, Cecil, there had been a lot of turnover on the coaching staff from the previous season. There were a lot of question marks specifically about the defensive side of the ball, where you had new arrivals and guys like Carl Scott. You had turnover at the defensive line position. You had Pete Golding coming in.
Tosh was in a position he'd never been in before.
And Tosh had been promoted to the coordinator spot, and that was probably the biggest question, if we're being honest about it. Do you think that there's fewer questions with this staff as a whole going into the upcoming season than there was a year ago?
Well, I think you've got veteran guys. You've got Sunseri. Pete Golding's not a veteran guy, but at least he's been through. He did most of the calling last year. Most of the coordinating as coordinating is. So you've got guys with a lot more experience, and from that standpoint, I think just judging by spring, just judging by 15 practices, that Nick Saban was more comfortable with that.
It certainly sounds that way as we get ready for the start of fall camp, a little bit more than a week away. I know you had a column this morning too, I guess, Cecil, on the situation involving Pat Fitzgerald and his comments on cell phones in relation to college football attendance. Give us your thoughts on that sort of barrage that we've seen in the last few days.
Travis, you've got kids that age. You're either going to adapt to it, or what are you going to do? Go around and, all right, hand over the cell phones in the bag. We're going to watch more football. It ain't going to work that way. And this has gone on forever. There's always technological advances, and young people are interested in them. And in some ways, it helps football. First of all, Pat Fitzgerald's never going to win the battle of saying that the internet's bad, because the people who get to decide whether what he says makes sense are the people on the internet. They're not going to say, "Oh yeah, we're terrible." Second of all, nobody told the SEC or the Big 12 or Big 10 to go sign these big TV contracts and put every game on TV.
Yep.
Nobody said, you do that, but I'm not going to sit at home and watch on my 68-inch screen. So you go ahead. Or I'm not going to watch on my telephone, which has better reception. It's like I wrote in my column. When I was growing up, you watched a screen the size of a briefcase that was housed in a cabinet the size of a boxcar, and I get a better picture on my iPhone. Yeah. So that's just part of it. Make it entertaining, and cell phones aren't free. You feel like you pick it up and use it every day, but somebody's paying for it. Parents are paying for it, or somebody's paying for it. But I'll tell you what's absolutely not free, and that's enjoying the camaraderie and the tailgating experience and all that stuff that Pat Fitzgerald was talking about.
Yeah.
That's sure not free. It's certainly not free at Alabama, and it's not free at Northwestern. Now, at Alabama, at LSU, at Georgia, anywhere in the SEC, and some of the spots in the Midwest, is so ingrained in the culture that the cost is worth it. That it's what you do, it's what you save for, and that's fine. But to say that there aren't lots of issues affecting college football attendance, is the telephone and the fact that I can play Grand Theft Auto on my phone, is that keeping me from going to football? Well, no, of course not. I'm long past that age. But some kids, maybe it is. But you're always going to have competition. The movies have competition. People don't go to the movies like they used to. They don't go to football like they used to. And it's not going to go away. It's not going to suddenly reverse.
Oh, there you go. Always great stuff from Cecil Hurt of the Tuscaloosa News and Tidesports.com. Thanks a lot, Cecil. We'll try to do it again next week.